You cannot tell the perfection in my ductwork right now, but it's amazing because there are 2 layers of ducting down here. There is our supply line and our return line. I didn't know how I was gonna get these drives to line up, to get one to go up and then the other or whatnot. So all the S's are in place and I drove them in and they line up with each other. I mean, maybe that's a no-no, but personally I feel like that is just incredible ducting work. Good help is very hard to find, so you just make your own. That's coming out of your budget. The occasional spills. All right, but any more of that, you're just wasting it. Oh my gosh. Jeez. All right. Well, I took the kids out of school today because I am a little behind on the ducting, and the one thing I can do, but I didn't want to spend time doing, is going back and painting all of the seams. Now, me and my buddy painted a lot of the seams when he was here a couple weekends ago for the ducting we put in, but I've put in a ton of trunk line since, and that is what these kids are doing because they can monkey up and into those crevices pretty easy. And I've been able to connect and run almost all the lateral lines in the upstairs. For instance, all of the vents going this way, all the way over, everything in the kitchen area, we've been able to place and bring. Now I just need to finish this up, but I'm waiting for an adapter and deciding on whether to do rigid over to there. I've gotten the question in the comments, why not just do flex ducting everywhere? For 2 reasons. One, it is very expensive compared to regular rigid tin. Flex ducting is way more expensive. And 2 is flex ducting, because of the wave in it and the fact that it's not, jet stream smooth like this is, it doesn't push air as much. So to get the same CFMs through flex ducting, you have to go up, whereas I can get similar CFMs for smaller of this. So that's where it becomes more economical as well. So I've put in what flex ducting we could, and then I'm gonna try and run as much rigid as we can as well, because the flex allows you to get around stuff that you can't get through with rigid, or at least that it's way more difficult. And then anything that's really these straight shots or straight shots with small jogs, we'll do rigid. Today we are at the end of a duct line and we are setting all of our lateral lines, and a lot of them are already done, but these are the last 3 big ones. And because they require such big CFMs, we have to do 10-inch ducting. And since this is only 8-inch from the side, it's easier to get that 10 inches on top. Now you can do it from the side, and I'll show you how to do that as well. But for right now, 2 of these are on top. This is the tool I'm using. This is a tin cutter, and it just cuts circles, and they're pretty cheap. I'll actually put one in the description if you're interested in it. And it is the only way to cut these. When I was talking to a few of the air conditioning people, they were like, if you're not using one of these, you're wasting your time, because it just saves so much time. Now, there is a few tricks to it. I found that if you go clockwise, there's less of a burr left on your ring. And I feel like that's the way it's meant to cut, but it can cut either direction if you need to. How to use it is really simple. There's a drill bit on one end that's cutting, and then there's just a little pin like a compass. And so you drill your hole where you've marked it, and you mark dead center. And then you adjust this to whatever length you're doing. This is 10-inch, so you bring it to the 10-inch mark, which means this is going to be 5 inches from center. Then you take this pin, set it in your drilled center hole, and then pick a spot and work. right to the board there. So the remainder of that I'll do with tin snips. There we go. And if you look at this, this doesn't have much of a burr on it. There's a little bit, but not a ton. But if you go counterclockwise when you're cutting, that burr that's on this piece will be on this. And so you've got to kind of clean that off. All right, the next step is we're going to take our takeoff and bend every other tab down. And I can't stress enough, you need to be wearing gloves when you're working with this sheet metal because these edges are razor sharp. And the last project we actually did, one of the HVAC guys went to the hospital to get stitches because he just got cut so bad. So don't even risk it or chance it, just put gloves on. Okay, so now that you've got this on and settled down, I like to push down on the side I'm going to start bending back, and those tabs that were straight, you curl back over so it'll kind of clamp. Oops, see? Dang it. Took my glove off for 1 second, got a little burr. And now I just take sheet metal screws and go around the perimeter. And since this one's so big, I've been doing every other. The 10-inch just seems like it needs as much support as possible. And the whole time I'm screwing these in, I try to push the ring or this takeoff to its edge so it's really tight into that corner, so I'm not kind of warping the shape more than I need to. And now this guy is not coming out of there. Now, one thing we'll definitely do is take our sealant and pack it all the way around this joint so that it is nice and airtight and we're not losing any air in this compartment, because when it comes and hits this end, we need it to shoot straight up out of these two. All three of our ducts are sitting out of our trunk line up there. 2 up the top and 1 to the side. And the one is to the side because I have plumbing that's going to come right behind it, that back end, so I don't have room there. If I come down, I will be dropping the ceiling in this room. We don't want to do that. I have just enough room to get it over to that 10-inch flex duct. Now, what I want to do though is run rigid ducting because I do have room all the way up there till I get to a few feet from that 90. Now I want to show you how I assemble my rigid pieces. What I like to do is connect it. There's a joint that you seam them together on, but I don't trust it, so I always put a couple of screws in. You put the screws on this side of the joint because the flap comes behind, and that's what you're wanting your screws to go through. A little footnote is to always put it off the edge. Don't ever go straight to the edge because that's where you're connecting, and that will just create problems later on. So I come off a couple inches and I do one in the center and then come off a couple inches and do one down there as well. Now we're not done with this. We actually need to run tape down it so it's sealed. And again, you can use the putty, but I think the tape works better, at least on the rigid round ducting. It just is real quick and easy, and I feel like that just works good enough. So your ducting comes as these kind of semi-round sheets, and there's 2 sides to the joint. And you can see these little tabs right here. This other side goes underneath and then clips into those, like so. But you're gonna line up your ends and start pressing them together. Here is a little tip I've discovered, is if the seam for this joint, or the seam for this piece right here, I don't want to line up with this seam, not because there's anything wrong with it, but because it just makes this part a little bit harder to get in and this part a little bit harder to get in. You're putting those 2 harder parts together, and I found it to be just a little bit more difficult. So I like to turn them opposite if I can, and maybe let that help me. And I found that it has helped me most of the time. So you just slide it right on, get it in place, and then with our tech screws again, you just go around. If you are a person who enjoys doing HVAC, something I think is like possibly wrong with you. This is the worst work I've ever done in my life. And I've done some pretty crappy work. This is the most frustrating work I've ever done in my life. I will never do it again. But if you're wanting to do your own, you do it. You can do it. I promise you can do it. Just have a pillow next door to you so that you can put your face into it and scream. And no small children. You might offend them with the cursing, and you might be prone to like picking one up and
Drop kicking them.
I don't know. So those are the few tips and tricks I know. You guys, that is it for today. If you like today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Do subscribe because it does help this channel continue to put out content so that I can keep giving you information of what to or what not to do in your DIY projects as well. Until next time, we'll see you guys later.